Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. Today, we're talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of Record Store Day 2025 pricing. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. So the Record Store Day list just came out last week, and over the course of last week, prices have been kind of rolling out. Some pricing came out over the weekend, and then some of it's been adjusted since then. So I will say, overall, yes, everyone complains about the pricing of records in 2025, really for the last several years, but it seems like prices have gone up considerably over the last couple of years. A majority of the records that we're seeing for Record Store Day this year, I think are actually priced pretty decently. A lot of them are under $30. There's a lot of really good deals out there. Yes, there are some outliers, but I think this year I've only got a couple albums I got on my ugly list. Actually, I guess I take that back. I got like 7 or 8 that I got on my ugly list, but it seems like the pricing for those isn't even as extreme as it has been over the last couple of years. But let's kick this off on a positive note. Let's talk about some albums I think are really good deals for Record Store Day. The first one is this Doors Strange Days 1967, a work in progress. So this is an RSD exclusive, 7,500 copies of it. It's going to be a translucent blue vinyl. It's going to run you about $25. I feel like a lot of the Doors albums over the last couple of years, even ones that are just a 1 LP release, have been more than this for Record Store Day for like any kind of like limited edition release that they do. These are all rough mixes of tracks early on in the recording sessions in 1967. These were all mixed by Bruce Botnick way back in the 60s, and I guess they were kind of just lost for a couple of decades. They did find them, and I think this would be kind of a cool release. I'm a big Doors fan. I think a lot of these demo releases are geared more towards the hardcore fans. Even though I love the Doors, I don't know how much I'll go back and listen to this one, but like I said, for $24 or $25, maybe I'll end up grabbing that one. You've also got Black Sabbath, The Eternal Idol. It's an RSD first. There's going to be 6,000 copies of it. It's another one's going to run you about $25. This is one I'm sure it's going to get reissued because I think this is going to be one of the biggest movers on Record Store Day. All the Tony Martin albums just got reissued last year, except for The Eternal Idol, which at the time I was surprised wasn't included in the box set, even though I get it. They're on a different label than the rest of the albums were. The rest of the albums for that Tony Martin were on were all from IRS. This was the last album that was on Vertigo, but Vertigo is owned by Universal, IRS is owned by Universal. So it should have been easier to get some kind of licensing agreement together, but whatever. We're finally getting a copy of it. I think it's going to be another album where they probably could have charged $10 more for that album, and it would have sold just as much. Another one that I think is kind of a good deal, even though it is only one track, it's a very, very long track. That's Nick Mason's Saucer Full of Secrets. So this is their release, their live version of Echoes. This is an RSD exclusive. There's going to be 4,000 copies of it. It's a B-side etching because Echoes is like 25 minutes long, so there's nothing on the B-side. This another one's going to be under $30. It's going to cost you about $25. This is all mixed in and done as a has-to-be master release through Abbey Road. It was recorded live in Germany in August of 2004. I love Echoes. It's one of my favorite songs by Pink Floyd. This is one where it's another one where I'm kind of on the fence about. $25, I might grab it. We'll see what I end up grabbing for Record Store Day. If some of the other stuff that I really want to get isn't available, maybe I'll grab a copy of that one also. You've also got Liam Gallagher Acoustic Sessions, RSD exclusive, 2,000 copies. It's going to be on silver and blue vinyl. It's a 2 LP release. It's going to run you about $28. I get it. A lot of the songs on this are from his 2019 album, Why Me, Why Not. There are a couple of Oasis tracks that he covers on here also. But, maybe that's why it's a little bit cheaper, because he's not doing a majority of stuff from Oasis. If he'd done that, maybe it would have been, maybe they could have charged a little bit more for this album. One that I've got on the good list, but I think it's only on the good list because, or if you are a huge fan of this band, this is Collective Soul Blender. So it's an RSD first. There's going to be 3,000 copies of it. It's going to have translucent cobalt vinyl. It's going to run you about $28. I think this is easily one of Collective Soul's worst albums. I know it hasn't been available on vinyl. I don't think it's ever been pressed on vinyl, actually. So it's one that I'm sure Collective Soul fans will want to grab copies of. But this is one where, if you haven't listened to this in a while, stream it, because of course, I'm not the biggest Collective Soul fan, but this is probably my least favorite album from the band. But I think Thelonious Monk live at the Yacht Club, I think this is going to be a good deal also. This is an RSD exclusive. There's going to be 3,500 copies of it. It's another 2 LP release. It's going to run you about $28. This is all recorded on October 31st and November 1st, 1964. It wasn't released until, I think, 1982, though. I love Thelonious Monk. He's one of my favorite jazz musicians. So a 2 LP release for $28, I think is a good deal. Jazz Dispensary albums are always a really great compilation to pick up on Record Store Day. It's a good way to get into sometimes some lesser-known jazz musicians. But you've got Kenny Burrell's on here. You got Coleman Hawkins. There's tracks by Yusuf Lateef on here also. But this is Night Lights. It's an RSD exclusive. It's going to be 4,000 copies. Midnight Blue vinyl. It's going to cost you about $28, which is, I think, a really good price for a jazz compilation. You've also got Elton John live at the Rainbow Theater. So this is all stuff from this is a compilation of tracks from his 1977 residency in London. It's an RSD exclusive. There's going to be 5,000 copies of it, $30. I think they could have easily charged more than that for this album and probably sold just as many copies, because it's Elton John. His stuff typically has a higher demand than some of the other stuff. It seems like every year the Rolling Stones release something for Record Store Day. It tends to be pretty limited. Sometimes it can be pretty pricey also. I'm thinking of the Let It Bleed release that was like hand pressed several years back, which was, I think, $100 when that came out for Record Store Day. They did a couple of greatest hits compilations over the last couple of years also. I want to say those were like $40 or $45 on Record Store Day. So they got Out of Our Heads coming out this year. It's only going to cost you about $30. It is an RSD first. There's going to be 6,500 copies. It's going to be on clear vinyl. But this is the US version of this album. So this version has I Can't Get No Satisfaction, which was not on the UK version. So, this is one I've already got. I've got the Rolling Stones box set, so I don't need another copy of it. But I think $30 is probably a pretty decent price for that album. Something I think a lot of people are excited for is this Thin Lizzy Jailbreak. So this is another one of those alternate version albums that's been really popular over the last couple of years. But I've got some of these, but I feel like I just don't go back enough to listen to them to warrant dropping the money on it. This is an RSD exclusive. There's going to be 6,000 copies. It's going to cost you about $30. So, like I said, if you're a big fan of Thin Lizzy, this would be a good one to grab. But, it's another one where they probably could have charged, at least another $5 on this one and sold all the copies that you've got in stock. And then the last couple albums I got on my good list are 2 albums I completely missed the first time I went through the Record Store Day list. You got Rage Against the Machine live on tour in 1993. It's an RSD first. It's going to be 15,000 copies of this. So this will get reissued. It might be, these copies might be around for a little bit though. But it's 2 LP release, around $31. This is a compilation of tracks from the 1993 tour. Supposedly it's all unmixed. These are all there's no overdubs on this. It's just what you would have heard at the show, which I think is kind of cool. It's one I'll read reviews on it once it comes out before I decide to grab a copy. Like I said, I won't grab a copy until it gets reissued, but it's one I got on my radar. But I definitely want to grab Teenage Bottle Rocket Total. This one's another one's going to cost you $31. I think it's easily one of the best punk albums, the early part of the 2000s. It's an RSD exclusive. It's really limited. There's only 1,000 copies of this one. And if you want to get an older pressing of this, they're really expensive. So, $31 is definitely a great deal in comparison. And then that brings me to the bad list, where these aren't albums I think are really overpriced necessarily, but these are albums where I just kind of question why these are being reissued. First off, I'm going to lump all of the picture discs together. I know that The Cure do one every single Record Store Day. Robert Smith, from what I understand, Robert Smith loves picture discs, so that's why they do those, but I can do without that. Do we really need another reissue of Fleetwood Mac's self-titled album? Vinyl Me Please just did a reissue of it last year or the year before. Rhino's done a couple of reissues of it. It's been reissued to death over the last several years. I don't think are there really fans out there asking to get a picture disc version of that? But there's also a couple of singles. Motley Crue's doing a picture disc single. Starship is also doing one. I can just do without all the picture discs. But then some other albums I got on here. So Taylor Swift is doing a RSD release this year for Fortnite. It's an RSD exclusive. There's undisclosed copies, so I'm sure there's gonna be lots of pressings of this, or lots of copies of this that were pressed. I'm sure they're all going to sell out immediately though. It's a 7-inch single. It's going to be on white vinyl. It's going to cost you about $17. It's Fortnite though. It's it's a good song, but really the only thing you got on here is a B-side with an alternate mix or a remix on there. So, it's just one of those releases where it feels kind of like a cash grab, because they know Taylor Swift fans are going to come out and buy these up. But, they could have easily done something more interesting, I think, for Record Store Day. I did a video a week or two back where I was talking about things I'd love to see for Record Store Day. I would have, if they would have done like a live Eras Tour album from her, it probably would have been the biggest selling album of the year. But a 7-inch single, I think there's a lot of people, I like a lot of her music. I've got zero interest in getting a 7-inch single of her song. You've also got Harvey Danger, King James version. It's an RSD first. There's going to be 1,000 copies of it. It's a 2LP release on Sea Blue vinyl. It's going to run you about $45. This is a good album. I think it's better than their debut album, which is, that's the one that's got Flagpole Sit on it. It's the one album that everyone knows. I think this is a better album, but like commercially, this album just didn't do a whole lot. I'm not sure how many people are really going to be looking for this album. It's one I might end up grabbing for Record Store Day, but $45, I think it's probably a little overpriced than what it should have been. And I'll toss one more album I didn't have on my list, but I guess I could put this one out there also on my bad list, is this Oasis compilation that's coming out. It's got all their singles from 1994 to 2009 on there. It's an RSD exclusive, I think. No, it's an RSD first. There's 1,000 copies of it. It's a 4LP release, which I get it. 4 LPs is going to cost more. I was thinking this thing was going to be around $100. I was a little disappointed to see it's going to be $125 because I probably would have grabbed a copy of it if it was closer to the $100 mark. But $125. I mean, you can pick this up on CD for literally a fraction of that price. So maybe I'll just end up doing that. And then that brings me down to the ugly list. These are albums that are either like wildly overpriced, or, of course, this is all just my opinion, but wildly overpriced, or albums that I can't believe there's that much of a draw for that they're going to be RSD releases. But especially this Lou Reed Metal Machine Music, it's an RSD exclusive. There's going to be 2,500 copies of it. It is a 2LP release. It's going to cost you almost $50 though. And this is one of those albums where this is just a terrible album. If you think Lulu was bad with Lou Reed, go back and listen to this album. There's not a single track I would ever listen to again off this album. I get it, that's a pretty rare album, and that's why there's an appeal to it, I guess, but $50 for this album is just crazy to me. There's also Patsy Cline, Imagine That, The Lost Recordings, RSD first, it's 2LP release, it'll be a little over 2,000 copies of it. It's another one's going to cost you about $50, man. I love Patsy Cline. I grew up listening to her music. A collection of lost recordings might be kind of cool to listen to, but man, for $50, it's just a lot for me. And even with it being a 2LP release, I think it probably should have been like $10 or $15 cheaper, at least, than what they're charging. It probably would sell probably a lot more, but is Patsy Cline in that kind of demand that a lost recordings album is going to go for that much? I think it's going to be a hard sell, and unfortunately, I think there's going to be a lot of record stores that are going to be left over with these albums that they're going to end up having to discount just to move out and end up losing money on. So last year for Record Store Day Black Friday, Better Than Ezra released Deluxe on vinyl. It's a really good album. I don't think it had ever been available on vinyl before. It was like $55, which I thought was a lot. Even though it is a really good album, I still might end up picking it up when it eventually gets reissued. But I saw they were releasing How Does Your Garden Grow this year. So this is an RSD first. There's 1,800 copies of it. It's 2LP release on orange vinyl. Same thing. It's going to run you about $55. But as much as I didn't like the pricing that they had on Deluxe, I understood it because there was a big draw for that album. Is there that much of a draw for this album? That's going to be $55 also. I think it's another one of those albums that might end up just sitting on the shelves in stores. You've also got War, Why Can't We Be Friends? So this is an RSD exclusive. There's going to be 2,200 copies of it. It's a 3LP release, so I get it. 3 LPs, $60, but it's War. I get it. This is probably their best known album, so you can charge a little bit more, but for a 3LP release, $60 is still kind of pricey for me, even if it's an album that I really love. $55 maybe was a better pricing for an album like this, but we'll see what if it ends up selling. I got a couple of jazz releases on here also. I get it that these are both 3LP releases, but $76 for these, even though I get it, jazz releases for RSD typically are a little bit more expensive. But Freddie Hubbard, On Fire, Live at the Blue Morocco, it's an RSD exclusive. There's 1,500 copies of it. Same thing with this Charles Mingus in Argentina, the Buenos Aires concerts. Same thing. It's RSD exclusive. 3 LPs, $76 for both of those. I would love to hear them. I'd love to listen to them. I'd probably love to have a copy of them if they were at least $20 cheaper, at least $15 to $20 cheaper, I might consider grabbing a copy of it, eventually, if they're available. But, $76 is just a lot for me. And I guess along the same lines as Better Than Ezra is Tesla. Tesla has some big albums. They've had some big RSD releases before. Reel to Reel is not one of them. This is an RSD exclusive. There's going to be 2,000 copies. It is a 2LP release. It's going to be $60 though, which is a lot for an album that I've long considered one of Tesla's worst albums. I get it. I don't think it's ever been available on vinyl before. So it does have some of that appeal to this album, but it's just a lot. And it's one where even if it was half that price, I probably still wouldn't grab a copy of it. But I think that this is another one of those albums that could sit on shelves, and the stores might have to discount them to sell them, or who knows? There might be a bunch of flippers that go out there and buy this album out thinking that they can flip it and make a good profit for it later. And I think the worst one is this last one. This is George Harrison, All Things Must Pass. It's an RSD exclusive. There's going to be 2,300 copies of it. It's a 3LP Zoetrope picture disc for $100, which this is another one of those releases where, is anyone asking for this? I mean, I get it. These Zoetrope picture discs have been popular over the last couple of years. There's been a lot of these releases. All Things Must Pass is a really great album. Probably George Harrison's best album, or at least one of his best albums. But is there really a market for this album? And especially at that price point? Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Record store day typically is pricier as far as records go. They tend to be a little more expensive than standard releases are, and I get it. A lot of them are limited releases, but I think there's a lot of really good deals for Record Store Day this year. Yes, there are some crazy expensive ones also, which I had to, the Oasis, I'd love to have a copy of it. $125, so I had to knock it off my list. There's no way I can get that. Like I said, maybe I'll grab a copy of it on CD, but I don't know. Let me know what you guys think of these prices. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.